Welcome to the Fantasy Football Clown Show. I'm your host, the Fantasy Clown, along with the real Brad Smith. A little bit different this year as we um, come to you. In both of us have new studios this year that we're filming from about an hour apart, I guess. Brad, aren't we? About an hour apart.
Yeah, much closer than previous years.
Yeah, we used to. I used to live in Connecticut, Brad in New York, and now we both live in New York. And I'm not sure. Do we even see each other as much, or do we see each other more often?
We used to see each other a little bit more often because of our monthly poker nights, but now that those are ending, it's probably a little bit less.
Yeah, I guess so. But I think with football season starting, maybe we'll play roulette or craps or something on the poker table and break it into something. And I know we're going to definitely watch some football, and I think it's exciting. This is year number 3 for the Clown Heads, and so what we're going to do tonight is preview each of our series of leagues, and we're going to start with Clownhead 1 through 5. And this was kind of where it all began for the Clownhead community. We have these 5 standalone leagues that are 12 teams, and they have our traditional scoring in Clownheads, which features tight end premium 3-point PPR total, which is a little bit more than maybe some of the other premiums for tight ends that you see out there. And this particular format features 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 4 receivers, 2 tight ends, and 2 flexes. They're all 12-team leagues, 12 starters, so 144 players start each week, and that really adds to the depth. And then each of these teams also have 18 bench spots, so 1.5 bench spots for every starter, makes 30-man rosters. We have 480 people, in these leagues that are out there. So all kinds of, we get real deep in each of the leagues. And I guess the 480 does include 5 taxi, 5 IR spots that each of the teams have as well to get to 480. But if you do the 32 NFL teams, that's 15 players per NFL team that are on rosters approximately in those 4 positions. So as you can see, it's really deep. They're all Empire leagues. So what that means is if you win back-to-back, you get to take home that Empire fund as well as the winning, prize money. Last year in Clownheads 1 through 5, we did have back-to-back winners, and so we did have one of the Empire funds taken, and so that was in Clownhead 3. We'll get those highlights here as well, but there's always extra money in addition to the $800 in prize money that we give out the first place and the $300 in prize money we give out the second place, as we really reward that week 17 championship week, at a high level, and we kind of gear for that. So as we take a look at Clownhead 1, this was the first team we naturally drafted, and we had Jason Pardo and River AD 98 win the first 2 years. So what that means is River AD 98 wins this year, gets that Empire pot as well. And so what we do is we actually take a look at the analytics to see who we think will win. And in Clownhead 1, the second most likely team to win would be actually JDM 1989. And we'll take a look at that roster. That, as you notice, isn't River AD winning the back-to-back, but JDM. What do you see on this team, Brad, that has it featured for one of the top spots?
I mean, obviously, just to start out, having Stroud and Tua as your top 2 QBs, I think that's pretty solid. Obviously, Stroud is a top 5 dynasty QB at this point. So, and Tua has honestly been real solid. Just he has injury concerns, but last year he probably would have put those to bed after playing a full season. So, um, I think his QBs are solid. That is also a little bit of the downside is he's basically just got those 2 QBs. But I I think if they both stay healthy, he should be all right. He could definitely make moves. His running backs are are real nice. He's got Jacobs and Walker and Swift and Zamir White, who's primed to take on a bigger role with the departure of Jacobs. And then his wide receivers are really nice too. He's got JJ, Nico Collins, Malik Neighbors, and Deontay Johnson, who are all have chances to be the number one guys on their teams. His tight ends are probably his worst thing, but even having McBride and Conklin as your two starters isn't bad. Like most teams in that league aren't going to have that.
I think McBride can be the tight end one. I mean, he wasn't last year, but I could see that really being that way. And I think Rodgers going to want to throw to Conklin. So I actually like the tight ends. Looking at the depth, maybe that's a little bit light. And as you know, Clownhead leagues, you really need to have depth. But I do see Jerome Ford there. So there's, some running back depth.
And Trey Benson. I think he'll be okay if injuries happen to guys. He even has Hunter Henry as a backup tight end who I think could be sneaky good this year with a rookie QB and Brissett.
Yeah, somebody's got to catch the ball there.
Yeah, somebody's got to be the main target. It looks like he's got a lot of just depth guys on his taxi, so if any of those hit, they could slot right in with Jalen McMillan and Malachi Corley especially.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that just the sheer number of tight ends, on his bench, maybe, Dalton Smythe was a player last year, Foster Moreau. I mean, there's just some things there that could make some sense. Josh Palmer might be the number one receiver for the Chargers, and then the quarterbacks look a little light to me. I mean, the backup quarterbacks, looking down the list there, Trubisky and Taylor Heineke are probably, and Davis Mills, I guess, are all the primary backups. But you get to Mike White's the third string, and Wolford and Allen are third string guys. So, very unlikely that they'll see the field.
But he does have high quality backup QBs. Like if Josh Allen goes down, he's got Trubisky. Like he still has high quality offense backups.
Yeah, that's true. And Davis Mills is the primary backup to Stroud, so he's got that handcuff in place. And then it looks like Taylor Heineke is going to be the primary backup to Justin Herbert. And as we're filming this, Herbert's dealing with an injury, so we'll see what happens there, and if he'd be ready to go. So I agree with you. I can see why the analytics say that JDM has as good a shot as any to finish in the top two and be there. Let's take a look at Jade Batista. That's actually the team that the analytics say will be in first place. So as you notice, no Jason Parle or River AD according to the computers. What do you think of this team, Brad?
I mean, just looking at this team from on paper, it looks like definitely one of the best teams in the league. I mean, his QBs are probably his worst position, but having Anthony Richardson and Bryce Young as your top two is definitely no slouch. They're nice and young, and he's got Bo Nix on the bench, who's going to be a starter right away. So I think even if they don't live up to what they are, I think he has three solid options at QB. His running backs, I personally like Pacheco. I think he's going to be a top 10 running back again. And then Eckler could have a resurgence in Washington. His receivers are definitely what's going to carry him throughout this season with Lamb, Puka, Jalen Waddle, and Marvin Harrison, with Rashee Rice and his flex. I mean, I don't think any other team's able to put a guy like Rice in his flex or even on his bench if he needs to. And then his tight ends are real good as well, with Njoku, Ingram, and Bowers all in the starting lineup.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think that depth is always a key, and so looking there, he's got some quarterback depth. Even though Nix is the only starter of the bunch. Willis and Howell are primary backups, so in good offenses, more aired out offenses. And I have an affinity for Samaje Perine. I think that's a guy that could have some staying power in a PPR league.
Dowdle, Emmanuel Wilson, like he has some prime backup running, prime handcuff running backs as well.
And then the receivers like JSN on the bench and McConkey, Douglas. Yeah, these are number one receivers on their team. Or the possibility of being number one anyway. So yeah, I can see where the analytics really favor Jay Batista. And I play in this league, so as you can notice, I'm not anywhere to be found here. So kind of interesting that it's looks like a real tough division. And so good luck to Jay Batista or River AD trying to run it back and get that Empire pot. Moving on to Clownhead 2. Last year we had Malahames take the top spot, Jack Powers the year before that. And so if Malahames brought it back, it would be 300, her way. However, looking at the top two spots, we'll look first at the second place spot. It looks like it's you, Brad, the real Brad Smith. Is who the computers say are going to be a top two team. So let's take a look at your team. And I know you were pretty you were surprised, I think, that your team hit this spot. And maybe the computer looking at this likes CJ Stroud. I see that's a common denominator. No, I don't know that. What do you think of this team, Brad? What do you?
I mean, I wasn't as confident in it as the analytics are, that's for sure. I mean, I took this team over this year. So I think I did a dispersal and drafted this team with somebody else. I mean, just looking at it from face value, Stroud and Cousins, I think will be a top QB duo. I don't really have anything behind them though, so if one of them gets hurt, it could be an issue.
But four top backups. So your four quarterbacks behind them are all the number one backup on their given team. Winston, Jones, Trask, and Pickett are all the backup for their respective quarterbacks.
Yeah. So. And then obviously my running backs might be my best or second best position with Brees and Pacheco, and then Eckler and Spears behind them. I think that'll be a solid core. Besides Eckler, all of them are pretty young. They'll be in the league for a couple years at least.
Yeah.
My receivers are probably my worst position, which is how I like to draft. So Flowers, Amari Cooper, Jacoby Myers, and Malik Neighbors. If the young guys like Flowers and Neighbors hit, then it could be a sneaky wide receiver core. Behind it, I don't have much, honestly. I mean, I've got Bateman, and that's about it behind that. But my tight ends are probably one of my best as well with Kincaid and Ferguson. I think that'll be a solid duo. And then also have Kmet, Hayden Hurst, Higbee, and Parkinson behind them. So I have no shortage of tight ends.
Yeah, you can get Higbee on the IR and pick up some more players. I mean, yeah, you've got some players that are cut, are not on their own practice squads. So you can really fill up the till a little bit and fill up your taxi to 5 and really take care of adding a bunch of players to your bench yet. But yeah, it looks like you're well poised to getting that to coming in at the top. How about head smackers? That's who the computer says should be the winner this year.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at this team, it definitely I think it looks better than mine, but it definitely depends on some of his players. Richardson and Goff, I think I compare with my QBs. But I think Richardson and Goff, I think I compare with my QBs. But I think Richardson and Goff, I think I compare with my QBs. But I think Richardson and Goff, I think I compare with my QBs. But I think Richardson and Goff, I think I compare with my QBs. But I think Richardson and Goff, I think I compare with my QBs. But I think Richardson and Goff, I think I compare with my QBs. But I think Richardson and Goff, I think I compare with my QBs. But I think Richardson and Goff, I think I compare with my QBs. But I think Richardson and Goff, I think I compare with my QBs. But I think Richardson and Goff, I think I compare with my QBs. But I think Richardson and Goff, I think I compare with my QBs. But I think Richardson and Goff, I think I compare with my QBs. But I think Richardson and Goff, I think I compare with my QBs. But I think Richardson and Goff, I think I compare with my QBs. But I think Richardson and Goff, I think I compare with my QBs. But I think Richardson and but he does have Minshew on the bench, so he does have a little bit of maneuverability there. Um, Other than that, though, he only has one other backup, so he might have to make a move if something goes wrong in the QB department. But his running backs look real good with Etienne, Rashad White, James Cook, Zamir White. He definitely kind of went the same way I did, and then stayed young with receivers with Drake London, Brandon Ayuk, George Pickens, Terry McLaurin. Um, I don't mind that at all. And then his tight ends are gonna be real good this year with McBride and Pitts.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's where the strength is in that thing. And Jordan Addison down there on the bench. I mean, that's and Deontay Johnson, Jameson Williams will get. I mean, it just feels like a lot of firepower. Taysom Hill, and so that's what he can do. He can actually sub Taysom Hill in at a quarterback spot if he to not take a zero.
True.
And that's kind of a cheat code in these two quarterback leagues. Taysom Hill, it's a nice spot to be able to have him sub into, the quarterback spot on a bye week or something just to pick up points.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, his tight ends are no slouches either. He's got a bunch of them with Fant, Musgrave, Isaiah Likely. Yeah, he definitely looks like he'll be a top 2 team. I'm still out for debate, but this guy, he might be up there.
He's a player, yeah, for sure. Looking at Clownhead 3, as we look at that, we've got JSL 111 won back to back. So the Empire Fund this year only going to be $100. JSL 111 could win it if he wins a third straight, but everybody else will be building for next year and have to bring it back. The analytics though don't have JSL 111 in the top 2 spots. So River AD is the second place finisher, and not sure. What do you think of them, Brad?
I think they could be replaced, honestly. They have a good team, but anytime you have Purdy and Aaron Rodgers, it definitely looks good on paper, but an injury to the 40-year-old quarterback, and he doesn't have much behind him. He has Winston, Wentz, and Lance behind them. So primary backups, but also he would need injuries to happen to other QBs that aren't his. His running backs are definitely solid with Brees and Jonathan Taylor, and then Chase Brown down here. He's got Dalvin Cook in case he has a resurgence. He's got J.K. Dobbins, Jordan Mason, Trey Sermon, even who are pretty good handcuffs this year.
Yeah, and Carson Steele, another handcuff for Pacheco.
Yeah.
I feel like they're good. I have 4 top running backs this year. It kind of my fab 4 for like in redraft, and Hall and Taylor are part of those 4, top 4 backs. And so I feel like, after you get by the first 4, then it gets, add Bijan and CMC in there. And if you get by those 4, then I think, even the tier of Barkley kind of drops off a little bit. And, that, so he's got 2 of the 4, I guess, is where I go with that. I feel like, man, it's a good start. When you have, I always look at teams and say, okay, how many top 25 players does a team have? And when you start to look and it's got 3 or 4 of them, then you're like, well, it's more than everybody else has naturally.
Yeah, for sure.
So I agree. And then the receivers look good, right? I mean,
they're solid. They're definitely young. He's got DJ Moore, Malik Neighbors, Tank Dell, and Christian Watson. Tank Dell and Christian Watson may not look as sexy on paper, but I mean, I think either one of them could be a main target, especially Christian Watson. Like he could surprise some people this year. His tight ends are very good as well with Kincaid and Ingram and Njoku. So he has basically 3 top 7 options.
Well, and that way you can always have 2 of the 3 playing, even on the bye weeks. You kind of have the option of, you have and Cheeky isn't, chopped liver either. He's not a top 7, but he's, a decent tight end or has some ability.
Yeah, and even Jonnu Smith could be a good target for Tua this year. He definitely has depth, and Jawan Johnson has been playing well in a couple years past.
Hey, move up a little bit there. Just okay. I thought I saw Kadarius Toney on somebody's team, and I'm like, oh, did he get picked up by somebody? But he's not. He's not anywhere there. He's still free agent. So, moving on to Clownhead 4. This is a league that you won back in the first year. The Real Brad Smith and the Draft Guru last year. So the Draft Guru would be the team that could repeat and get the Empire Fund. However, looking at the analytics, it looks like Jack Powers has the second best team on paper. So, taking a look at Jack's team, and Jack was, a top team a couple years ago in some of these leagues, but not Clownhead 4. So,
yeah, I mean his teams are always solid. It seems like he's always up near the top. But this team I think could be something kind of special if everything goes right for him. I mean, anytime you got Pat Mahomes, I think you're thinking you're in a pretty good spot. And then Dak's been a top 10 QB as well for the last couple years, so I think he's expecting big things out of his QB room, especially with Baker and Nix on the bench. Like, I think he has a lot of maneuverability there. And then his running backs might be one of his worst spots, and even so, he's got Rachaad White, Aaron Jones, Raheem Mostert, and Zamir White.
They all feel old. I mean, I guess the Whites aren't old, but it just feels like an old team when I start staring at it.
Yeah, it definitely looks a little old, but I mean, you're trying to win one year. this definitely could be a team to do it. His receivers look a little bit older, but I mean, they're definitely big names with Mike Evans, Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins, and Tyler Lockett. And then his tight ends are still relatively young with Kincaid and Evan Ingram. So, I mean, I think he's got a real good team here. Looking at his depth, he's got Eckler on the bench, who could have a good year. He's got Jalen Polk, and then he's got a bunch of starting tight ends with Jonnu Smith, Pat Freiermuth, and even Zach Ertz.
So there's some firepower to trade if you get into, a jam. It feels like some firepower.
Yeah.
To trade along. Yeah. Looking at the top team, Jason Henson 38 is the team the computer really has pegged as the best team here in this league. It's got those 2 running backs again, right?
Yeah, and to add that, you got the running back QB duo with Lamar, so he might have a real good team here with Lamar, and I think Deshaun comes back in a big way this year, so he could have a top QB duo there too. And then obviously having Breece and Jonathan Taylor is nice, but you also get to chug out there Kenneth Walker and Brian Robinson if one of them gets hurt or something. Like, that's real solid. His receivers are nice and young with Drake London, Michael Pittman, Zay Flowers, and Ridley.
Well, 4 number ones, right, on their teams.
Yeah.
I mean, unless he not maybe the number 1 instead of Ridley, but I mean, you really are, 4 number ones, for all intents and purposes on their teams.
Yeah,
so,
sure. And then he has the best dynasty tight end in Sam Laporta right now, and Jake Ferguson, who a lot of people are expecting to have a big year this year. So his tight ends are real good too. It looks like he's got Bryce Young on the bench, so he can kind of maneuver a little bit on his QB spot. He's got Charbonnet as a handcuff to his Walker. Um, it looks like he doesn't have that much wide receiver depth, so he kind of needs those four guys to work out.
Well, but Gabe Davis, Wandell Robinson, Wandell, especially PPR, kind of has some PPR staying ability, I believe.
Yeah, he could definitely.
And then I think in this two quarterback setup, having Taysom Hill that you can put in the quarterback can really help. I mean, like that, you can put him at tight end, and when you have a two quarterback, two tight end, you can actually put him in, whenever you get into a bye week jam and get some points when other people take 0 points. Like that's a big deal in this format. Taysom Hill is a pretty big piece because you can maneuver with him in those two, scarcity positions where people are like, struggling to get points, and you can at least have a shot at some decent points.
Yeah, and it seems like that's a common denominator in these top teams in these leagues that don't have very good QB depth. Like they all seem to have Taysom Hill, so they're definitely thinking about that.
Makes sense for sure. Taking a peek at Clownhead 5, as we look at that, the first two winners were W. Barrett W. and then Kerwin 17. And looking at Clownhead 5, we had Turkleton is one of the top two teams that the computer, brought to the forefront. And so let's take a look at Turkleton.
Absolutely. Bringing that up now.
What do you think of this team, Brad?
He might have the worst QB duo out of the teams we've seen so far with Dak and Carr, but I mean, even so, I don't think it's horrible. He definitely has a lot of running backs with Jahmyr Gibbs, Brian Robinson, Jerome Ford, Zach Charbonnet, and Dalvin Cook on the bench, Chuba Hubbard on the bench, Khalil Herbert on the bench, who will all have opportunities, I think, at some point, especially Chuba Hubbard he might be able to replace Charbonnet right away in the flex spot there.
Yeah.
His receivers look real good with CeeDee Lamb, Drake London, Jalen Waddle, and Jacoby Myers. I think that could be one of the best wide receiver cores in this league for sure. And then his tight ends are no slouches either with Kittle and Njoku.
Yeah, I always think that depth really plays a role. I see Worthy and Mike Williams coming back. I understand Mike Williams is going to be the X, and they're going to move Garrett Wilson all around the formation. So I mean that's something that having Mike Williams isn't horrible. And so it looks like he's got some receiver depth, but tight end is kind of hitter. There's no tight end depth there. And as you know, depth in these leagues seems like that's what rules the day. I'll be kind of shocked if this team gets to the top two, honestly. Yeah, I mean, without looking at the others, I think I'll be kind of shocked. Nice starting lineup, but bye weeks and injuries are a thing, and I guess I would say I think this one will have trouble repeating, or getting to the top spot. The top team that we have is Kerwin 17, and actually Kerwin 17 is who won Clownhead 5 last year. So the computer has kind of picked a $300 Empire Fund winner here. And what do you think of this team?
I mean, just looking at this team from face value, I mean, he might have the most top 10 fantasy players in the league with, I mean, Josh Allen and Matthew Stafford as your two QBs looks real nice, even though Stafford's a little bit older. But I mean, then you go down to his running backs, and he's got Christian McCaffrey and Kyron Williams, Aaron Jones, who may feel old, but I mean, they could all be top 10 running backs this year.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, geez, CMC, he might be the first redraft player off the board in a lot of leagues. And in this format, Josh Allen is probably the first, person off the board. So, we've already taken care of that. We have two top 5 players there. And then remember 3-point PPR for tight ends, and you have Travis Kelce. So, while all these guys might not be the youngest of the bunch, you're definitely taking the top person at 3 of the 4 positions and putting them on the team. Like, seriously, you got the tight end 1, you've got the running back 1, and you've got the quarterback 1. So you start your team with that kind of player, and you're also a good start. And then if I were to tell you that any of the 4 receivers he put out there, they might have all been wide receiver 1s at one point in their career. Like, I mean, they're all pretty solid. Definitely top 25 players at some point in their career, where we were all taking them in the first round somewhere. Debo maybe being a little bit of an exception. Maybe we were taking him in the second round, but beyond that, we were taking these guys as first round picks and somewhere, in the not too distant past. So I agree with you. I think this team, while it's a little bit older, it's got a lot of, star-studded power. But
Absolutely.
as we're peeking at the depth, I guess depth is a winner. But Kirk Cousins helps. I mean, I guess that helps.
I mean, his depth doesn't look too bad. Getting to sit Cousins, who a lot of people think is going to have a big year this year. He has Jalen Wright as a young guy, and his running backs. I think Jamal Williams will play a role in the Saints offense this year. Rico Dowdle on the bench. He's got Dontavian Wicks and Demario Douglas I
guess there is some more depth than I saw.
His tight end depth might be the worst, but he's still got Zach Ertz, who I think is still going to be a starter this year until he's hurt or something. Tucker Kraft even could have a good role in the Green Bay offense still.
Oh, Hollywood, Hollywood and Keaton Mitchell there. Well, yeah, okay, he's got some stuff.
Yeah, I think he's got some room here. I think I can definitely see why they put him in the top 2.
Yeah, and so I guess probably I agree with you. It might have as good a chance as anybody at bringing back the Empire. It'll be fun to watch him as we go. Who's the top points each week. So each week, when Brad and I come to you, we're going to actually highlight who was the top point getter in each of these leagues as well. So it'll be interesting to see how many of these first and second analytics teams, hit that top spot in the league in points for the given week. But looking at that, looking at where things are in Clownheads 1 through 5, any kind of takeaways, Brad? From what you saw, I know you're number 2 in Clownhead 2, and you won Clownhead 4 in the past. So,
yep. I mean, basically, it seems like you got to have at least 2 top 25 players to get into that position. I mean, that's kind of what I saw from all these teams. They had at least a pretty good QB and a pretty good tight end, at least one of them each. So I think that's a big way to get to the top in these leagues.
Makes sense. I guess how many of these leagues do you play in, Brad? Are you in?
Out of Clownheads 1 through 5, I think I'm in 3 of them now. 4 of them actually, everyone but 1.
Okay, so you're in 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yep.
Okay. And is that what you thought of your teams? You thought 2 was your best team, and
I mean, I still think 4 is my best team, but I think I'll have to prove people wrong again this year, like I did the first year.
Gotcha. And I kind of feel like this will be year 3 for me. I'm in all 5 leagues, and typically year 3 is when I do kind of make a little bit of a move. Not just saying I'm going to win them all, but it is a time when I tend to my teams sort of get better. I have seen that, when we get to year 4, that I really kind of come on strong just the way I draft. It seems like year 4, it kind of all comes together a little bit for me because of how young I draft and how I just kind of fill in. So I guess I'll be looking forward to next year a little bit, but excited to see where it goes and see who can get some wins. So good luck to the people to have the chance to repeat as champs, and good luck to the teams that the computer, kind of made as the odds-on favorites, if you will. And we'll see how close analytics go to, what we've built. And I'm always interested in that is, how predictive are these teams? How predictive, as we've seen in years past. As Brad mentioned, nobody picked him to win, he won. So, that's kind of an interesting, what we found is the analytics aren't quite right when you start having injuries and depth comes into play. So, depth is a key. And so we're excited. Thursday's coming and the kickoff. And so, we're excited to come back and give a recap each week. And next week on these top 5 or Clownheads 1 through 5, we'll have a top score. So it'll be interesting to see how close the analytics were. For now, he's Brad. I'm the Fantasy Clown, and we'll say so long.